Welcome to Her Own Boss, the podcast and community designed to help you find your inner entrepreneur. Her Own Boss is created by Lucy, Megan, Ben, Sarah, Nikki, and me, Anissa, as we start our careers and learn from the inspiring women who can help us along the way.
Hi everyone, this is your host Nikki, and today I'm joined again by Hannah Awonuga. Hannah is the Global Head of Colleague Engagement for Diversity and Inclusion at Barclays, and is also the founder of Rarity London Career Coaching. If you listened to Hannah's last minisode, How to Stand Up Against Microaggressions, then you'll already know that she's an expert at all things diversity and inclusion. Today, she's here to help us understand unconscious bias and how we can all be more consciously inclusive in order to create more accepting spaces and be better allies. Enjoy!
This minisode is sponsored by Rise, created by Barclays. Rise is a global community of the world's top innovators that is on a mission to support female founders create the tech solutions that will shape our future for the better. Search Rise, created by Barclays, to find out more.
Hi Hannah, how are you?
I am good. Good morning.
Welcome back. It's so good to have you back on the podcast.
I know. I follow you guys and you're doing some amazing things. So I'm always like, oh, I need to get back on there. Like, I need to be part of this.
Oh, thank you. Well, you're welcome anytime, honestly. We love having you on. So I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time. And instead of defining conscious inclusion, which is kind of in the title, is actually start by asking what is unconscious bias, and if you can, share any examples as well.
Yeah, so the topic of unconscious bias is such an interesting one, right? It's been researched, it's the most talked about, it's been the most drawn for piece of training that has when it comes to diversity and inclusion. It's like, right, let's dust off our unconscious bias training. And when I think about the definition, to me, it's almost like the learned stereotypes and biases and prejudgments that we have as we just go through life that then inform our decision making. And this is where the unconscious bias bit comes in, because it's learned and it's kind of something that becomes quite ingrained. What then happens is, for instance, in myself, maybe I'm interviewing and somebody says that they went to Harvard University. My unconscious bias will tell me, right, they're great, right?
Yeah.
The unconscious bias in me makes the judgment based on my own, my own stereotypes, my own attitudes, my own biases. We hear so many, that if all you need to do is just type in unconscious bias, and you'll see so many examples. You've got halo effect, which is when, you see someone in a positive light, and so therefore, you kind of prefer them. You make a preference based on the fact that you see them in a particular way. You've got age bias, gender bias. Gender bias is an interesting one, because you could say that actually that's a common one, because we see a lot of white men in senior positions. And so maybe actually the unconscious bias there is that, men are being interviewed by men who are coming with the same characteristics, same background, so therefore they are then preferred. So we're going to go into so much, and I could go on, but I would say there is a place for understanding our biases, our unconscious biases, absolutely a place for it. But what it's not is the solution. You can't do your unconscious bias training and then say, right, I'm now an inclusive employer, or I'm now consciously inclusive, which I know we're going to get into.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a really good definition, and good to put some examples to it as well. So I studied psychology at uni, and obviously we did modules on stereotypes and prejudice and these kind of associations that we have that, like you say, are learned, but we don't even realize. And I think it's really helpful to, the way you explained it, is to give examples of unconscious bias that actually works in other people's favor, because it's not, unconscious bias isn't a dirty word. It's not that we only have unconscious biases that are negative towards groups of people. There are also the more positive ones, and when you understand it like that, you're so right. It's so good to understand your unconscious bias, but
Yeah.
as we're going to go into now, it's not the solution.
Mm.
So,
No,
next
it's not.
definition is, how would you define conscious inclusion?
Yeah, so just before we started, I said to you I wanted to just go and make sure I get the right
Hmm.
definition, because conscious inclusion is probably a newer concept, right? So people may actually be really interested in this topic because it might be quite new to them. But it's not new, it's not really new at all, right? It's not groundbreaking. Conscious inclusion is when you just proactively and strategically be inclusive, when you seek out inclusion, when you bring it to the conscious mind, and you actively use your thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors to allow for inclusion. And so, it's in other words, it's not enough to just be aware of your unconscious bias. That's not enough,
Hmm.
right? You can't just say, right, yeah, I'm aware that I'm unconsciously biased, or I know that my biases may seep in, and that's it, right? No. Conscious inclusion is when you say, I understand that I understand, I'm aware of my unconscious bias, and now I am actively, moving into that conscious inclusion, where I'm going to consciously make an effort to include people who may not feel included, right? Great examples of that is when you're in a meeting, and you get the loudest in the group, you get the joker, you get the introvert, you get the quiet one, you get the one who doesn't speak, you get the one who wants to kind of give examples all the time. Consciously inclusion is looking around that room and saying, who hasn't contributed? Who is sitting
Yeah.
and not saying anything? Who's being drowned out by the loud, bubbly, enthusiastic colleagues in the room?
Hmm.
And so that conscious inclusion is just constantly looking at ways to bring people into the conversation.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And that's good leadership there, what you're describing, right? It's really
Mm.
recognizing what your unconscious biases are and then thinking, what action am I going to take so that I kind of can maybe relearn those unconscious biases, or at least, be a better ally and be more inclusive. And I think this connects really well to the last mini-sode you did with us on microaggressions, where we talked about a similar thing. It's about being aware of what biases you have and what that might mean in terms of your actions, and taking kind of more proactivity to fix those and go against them. From your perspective, what are some of the ways we can be more consciously inclusive? Is there practices that people are putting into place regularly? Are there trainings? What does that look like from kind of long-term action point of view?
Yeah, so it's something that you can start today. It's something you can start straight away. And yes, there will be training, I'm sure of it, I know that there is training out there already, but I'm a bit on the fence with this, let's go straight to training, because actually you can um you can live it yourself already. Like, I feel like sometimes we wait, right? We wait for the training, we wait for the seminar, the webinar, but actually just having a conversation with somebody who is different, right?
Mhm.
Just actively seeking out somebody who's not in your usual circle and having a conversation, that is consciously being inclusive, right? Because when it comes to some of the global celebrations, Christmas, everyone wants to have a conversation about what you're doing over the holidays, what you do. It's the same for other groups. It's the same for underrepresented groups. So that would be my first thing. Definitely have a conversation with somebody who doesn't look like you, speak like you, come from the same background as you. And then it's about being an ally. So allies, again, you would have heard, is not really a new term, but it's a term that people are trying to use to say that I am an ally of somebody who is different. And so to me, that is really important, to make sure that you build an inclusive culture, is become an ally, join a network that you don't particularly connect to, speak to somebody who you wouldn't speak to normally, go out and do your research, go and do Netflix have done it for you. Like, you can go and find up a load of series on Netflix, or you can go to your podcast platform and listen and learn. And I think an inclusive leader, an inclusive ally, should I say, doesn't only, you know, go out and speak, they go and learn. And that's where the
Mhm.
beauty is, because you can't unlearn what you've learned. So the more you learn, the more you're able to contribute to a conversation. I've talked about joining forums and networks. I think that's a great way to do it as well. And then just, again, just using your conscious to do it in everyday interactions. You don't have to have a mind of diversity all the time, but it's just nice when you're in a meeting and you're just thinking, okay, who's missing? Who's not speaking? When you're doing your recruitment process and you're thinking, well, who have I already got in my team? Consciously inclusive means that, one of the things that I've spoken about recently is about this whole notion of fit. And the fact that we unconsciously say, will they fit in the team? I hope they fit. I hope they fit in the team. Will they fit in the organization? And when you recruit for fit, what you're doing is you're looking for similar. You're looking for similar to what you already have. And so I now am really pushing the agenda of looking for value add. What is this person going to add? What are they going to add to the team? What's missing that we don't have that we need? What is the value add that this person can bring? When you look for add, you're looking for difference, you're looking for unique, you're looking for background and all of that richness. When you're looking for fit, you're looking for similar. You want people to slot right into where you all are. And that is how we are really going to move the agenda. So I would just say, one of the things that I'd love to get out today is let's move away from looking for if they fit. We don't want them to fit. We want them to be bold and different and cultural so that we can then bring something different.
I love that. That's all really helpful. I mean, what I'm taking away from that is that it's about being curious about people who are different from you, and to kind of bridge the kind of end of your answer where you're talking about organizations and hiring. It applies to your personal life as well. Don't just seek things out that already fit with you and with your lifestyle, because you already know that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say, so part of Rarity London, when I'm speaking to my clients, I always say, what does your Instagram feed look like? Is it all the
Yes.
same? Is it all
I
the
love,
same people? It's to get like diversify with the information that you're taking in. Follow some groups that you don't normally follow, and so then unconsciously you start to take in information of difference. So I'd encourage you, whatever feeds you're looking at, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, diversify that, because we know that that's our go-to, right? That is our downtime. So if you follow a different group, if you follow different groups, you're going to intake different information, and then that way you can then have more consciously inclusive conversations based on the information you're taking in.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's something that I've been trying to do over the last couple of years, because I was having a conversation, I think it was with my cousin, and she was, I think someone brought it up to her, and then she said to me, like, what does your Instagram feed look like? Who are you following? What information are you taking in? And I think it's important to remember that diversity and inclusion isn't a buzzword for work. It's not just about making workplaces diverse and inclusive. It has to be everywhere. So whether it's, the films you watch, the books you read, the influencers you follow, all of that should be as diverse as possible. And, I think working to be kind of, I guess, respectfully take in that content and really learn is just so important. And like you said earlier, Netflix has done the work, so it should be easy for us to do.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hannah. Is there anything else that you wanted to add on this topic?
Just that diversity and inclusion, equity, equality is a journey, right? It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. But the beauty of this piece of this type of work or of this learning is that you can learn as you go and you can take it in bite size, but you have to do the work. You can't sit around. We all have to get involved. We all have to be inclusive. And so, that would be my message to everybody. Go out and do something that's different. Go and speak to somebody who is different. Go and understand how you can be an inclusive leader. You don't have to have a title to be an inclusive leader. You can be a thought leader. I see that what you guys are doing on this podcast as amazing thought leadership. You are bringing conversations to people that maybe they wouldn't have come across, in their usual life. And that is about inserting, difference and inserting a place where people can have, authentic conversations. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. That's so flattering, because I know that you're a role model for like the whole team. So we really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming back and sharing with us.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, then please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating. You can find out more about us at heroandboss.co.uk or by searching Her Own Boss Podcast on Instagram and LinkedIn.